Now, having used Filmic Pro for about a year now, I wanted to pass on some tips. Before we get into that, I just want to mention that Moment has their film festival. Submissions open now, so if you do have a short film or you're planning a short film, it's well worth entering to that film festival. I watched it last year, did a great job running that. And also, it's super cheap. It's about $2 or $3 to enter. So if you've got a film, enter that. And in the meantime, let's get on with my Filmic Pro tips. The first tip today on Filmic Pro is to not use the zoom function on Filmic Pro. The reason being is that smartphones are terrible for noise when it comes to zooming in. And you'll see, the closer we get, the noisier the image gets. And as you get really close, it's awful. And there's really nothing you can do about that. If we look at closer there, the noise on the leaves, the background, the pot, the curtain, everything is really noisy. And if you try and get the focus back in as well, there's just nothing you can do about it to try and get that in sharp focus because it's on a smartphone. So just avoid using zoom altogether. You can use automatic focus pull to do a push in. I've got a video on that as well, so check my Filmic Pro playlist for any of that kind of stuff. So do avoid using the zoom function. In my short film Plant Lady, there's a scene where the actress is walking down the stairs and she's being watched by CCTV footage. Now I wanted it to look old and grainy and black and white, so that had a bit of a rough feel to it. Now I didn't do this in post-production, I actually did this with the cinematographer kit in Filmic Pro. So this is an in-app purchase cinematographer kit. So if you go to the bottom left here where you've got the three colours overlapping for the white balance, you press on that and you've got these options here. Now the greyed out block on the left hand side is your cinematographer kit. The middle section shows your different dynamic ranges that you can use: natural, dynamic, flat, log, shadow, highlights, etc. But if you go to the bottom, you've got your RGB curves, red, green and blue, saturation and vibrance. So to make it black and white, all you do is hit that saturation and slide it to the left. That's it. Very, very simple. And you still get that really nice clean image as well. A big tip that I want to share that I've learned over the last sort of 10 months of using Filmic Pro is to use 4K resolution when filming big projects. So if you're doing vlogs and stuff, 1080p is fine. But if you want to do something where it's a film or just a professional project of whatever sort it is, film in 4K. The reason being is twofold. A, if you've got areas like this, which after shooting you don't want, where this light from a window edge is coming in, it looks a bit messy, a bit untidy. Maybe you've got this bottle here, which looked good at first, you thought, but then actually we don't like that either. We can crop this in using DaVinci Resolve or whatever editing software you're using, and you won't lose resolution because you're shooting in 4K. If you're doing 1080p, you would lose resolution and it would get noisy. But because you're using 4K, you can zoom in, you don't lose the information, and you still get a nice clear shot, and you're cropping all that out. Also, the second reason, if you want to zoom in on someone's face, you can create a close-up out of one shot and a wide. So this one's sort of a wider shot of this actress, we'll call her, called Harley. And you can zoom into the face in the mirror and again, not lose focus. So you're using 4K, A, to make sure that you can crop out things you don't want if you need to. And B, you can create a zoom effect by doing a dynamic zoom, or you can use a simple zoom by making it feel like you're using two shots from one. So shoot 4K for your professional projects. Now on Filmic Remote, you can create a thing called the monitor mode or director mode, and you do exactly the same thing here within Filmic Pro on its own, so you have a nice clear screen to see everything on there. Now the way to do this is go to Settings, go to Device, scroll all the way down, and you'll see here, Tap to Hide Interface. So if you tap that, that turns that on. We then tap the main screen, and now all we have to do is tap the main screen again and you'll see everything disappears apart from the main reticules. So I think this would be really helpful for long shots, like if you're doing a long take of about 3, 4, 5 minutes plus, it'd be really helpful so you're not distracted by everything that's on the screen and you can just look at the performances or who you're listening to in an interview, for example. Then to get that back onto screen, you tap the button on the bottom left to bring up your focus wheels and your ISO wheels, and they're all back on the screen. Now, something I've learned from using Filmic Pro so much after the last 10 months or so is that not all clips will require the audio that's live there in the take. So maybe it's a film, it's a montage, or it's something I know I'm going to be doing a voiceover for. To just use the video and no audio so you can then add what you want to afterwards in post-production, you go to Settings, Audio, scroll down, and turn on Video Only. So obviously you can hear that there's no volume coming out from this mic directly. Now I'm doing a voiceover for this. So now without that audio and we're just using the video only, you're free to use whatever you want, whatever sound you want over the top of that. So I always use freesound.org, which is a great website to get your sounds from and Atmos from. add the rain effect over it with the audio, and you're good to go.
Now, something else that I've got to grips with over the last year is really understanding how the ISO works and what it means. So the ISO is essentially the number above your shutter speed. So right now, if you look to the left-hand side, we can see it's at 22. You want to keep that ISO as low as you possibly can. Now that number might vary slightly according to what phone you're using. On mine, the lowest number is 22. So you want to keep that. That means you're going to get a nice clean image. However, if you're in somewhere a little darker like this, the kitchen area isn't that sort of bright. So I can slightly adjust it upwards to 93 and the image is still pretty good. But if you go too high, you get overexposure and the noise goes up as well. So you want to keep it minimum under 100, which looks good there. But ideally, you want to keep it as low as you can. The way you can do that is just pump more light in. So if you've got lights around your home or you've got actual filming lights, push more light indoor shots as well. So indoors, you can still keep your ISO nice and low. So keep your ISO as low as it possibly can be. That way, you won't be getting really noisy footage. One of the topics I find come up a lot on Filmic Pro forums and such is people who are starting out don't understand why their audio isn't coming out from their takes. So they're filming, they're not getting their sound back at all, and they're wondering what's broken. When in fact, most of the time, it's actually that the audio meter is set way too low. So the audio meter bar that you want to be looking at is the white line just below the timecode medallion there. Now, if you bring that too low, you're not going to get enough audio, no audio really. And if you put it too high, then it's going to be peaking and it'll be hard to recover that audio properly in post-production. So if we play a little bit of music here, we'll see how different it sounds as we move that bar up and down. And then as we move it higher and higher, if we put it right to the top, we start to get some peaking as well, perhaps when it goes red at the end. And in the middle is the sweet spot. So in between the last two sets of 2 zeros is where you want that white audio bar. That way you're going to get a nice amount of sound, not too much so it's peaking, not too little that you can't hear it. That is the sweet spot for your audio. Now a tip that I wish I'd learned much earlier on is how to work with your files better. So if you press the play button in the bottom right here, you've got all the files and all the things that you've shot so far. Now you can delete them individually by hitting the red bin button by swiping it to left and then pressing that. Or you can hit that tick button, and that will allow you to start selecting each individual clip that you want to get rid of, and that's fine. However, if you want to delete batch of clips, so all of them if you want, you hold on to it and it goes green and it shows you the number of clips that you have there, so 4 clips that I can delete or export. This really saves you a lot of time and I wish I'd known this earlier. A really useful tip as well is about the orientation of your phone. Now, the trouble I have sometimes is if I go from portrait to horizontal, I have a moment where the phone doesn't want to go horizontal, and when you're filming something, you're on the go, you're against the time, it can be a little bit time consuming and annoying to play with. So to get away from that, you hit settings, then go to device, then just below there you'll see orientation lock. Tap that so you're turning it on, and now you'll see that this is now locked in horizontal mode. So no matter what you do with the phone, it will stay like that and save you a little bit of time. One of my more advanced tips that I've learned over the first year of using Filmic Pro is when it comes to color grading and color correcting. So if you get the cinematography kit and we look into that, you can see we've got the profiles of natural, dynamic, flat, and log version 2. Natural is good for anything really, but if you want to get into color correcting and grading, really you want to use flat or log V2 or V3 if you've got one of the newer phones. So if you go to flat, you can see you get more detail on the highlights and the shadows, and even more so if you go into log. Now, the thing is with log is you need to have the perfect lighting conditions. With flat, I find I can use this for anything and I always get really nice consistent footage. And even though you might not get as much detail as log, it still looks really good. Unless you've got someone who's a real tech head watching your stuff, they're not going to notice a difference. So I would advise, particularly if you're not really adept to, knowing what exactly the perfect lighting conditions are, use flat profile and you'll get a nice consistent amount of color grading footage quality with that. And as you get more to grips with log and knowing when to use that with certain types of lighting, then move on to that as well. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this video and you picked up a lot of tips that you're going to use in your future projects with Filmic Pro. If there's any tips that you think are glaringly obvious that I missed out, then do hit the comments below so I can learn from that, as well as everyone else can learn from that, so we can share all these tips together and become better filmmakers in the meantime. If you enjoyed this, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, do all that good stuff, and I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.